Okay, so now to finally, I guess, formally introduce the speech genres or the types of speeches that you'll cover. Here's the title slide. A genre is kind of people have probably heard the word before with reference to maybe music or types of movies, types of stories in general. It's a way of putting things into categories so that people, when they are about to experience, a performance or hear someone deliver a speech, they kind of know a little bit of what to expect. They have some kind of expectations about how it's supposed to go. And so then that means that the burden, of course, is on the speaker to generally align with those expectations in terms of typically how that kind of genre of thing goes. So it's like a label, basically, right? That you have in labeling something as like a romantic comedy, for instance. In movies, it's kind of like there's some typical things that happen in a romantic comedy. There's a particular sort of story arc where people meet and maybe they start off being not really they meet in some sort of like quirky circumstances. And they only later, kind of realize that they love each other, and they live happily ever after through navigating these obstacles. And so when you know you're watching a romantic comedy, you kind of like know how to interpret what's going on according to the particular conventions of that kind of movie. And so you can just try to think of some other examples of this and what are the things that tell you that what you're listening to or watching is a particular genre as a way to understand this, a little more deeply for yourself. We base the three main types of speeches in modern public speaking class basically on these three types of speech genres that have been contemplated since the ancient Greeks. And these are called the epidictic tradition, the judicial tradition, and the deliberative tradition. So let's take these one by one. Epidictic is our stand-in or our equivalent to celebratory or ceremonial speaking, what I'm also calling special occasion speaking in the class. And typically the idea was that it's kind of like a speech about a person. We can widen that in what we'll talk about for the special occasion unit to be sort of speech that pertains to a particular situation. But in the original context, the idea was it's like a speech either celebrating somebody or sort of castigating them, a political advertisement, let's say, or something like that. And so it's very kind of present oriented. It's about, reckoning with something that's happening right now. And the reason that these speeches exist is because sometimes in particular moments, somebody needs to say something in order for a community of people to deal with what's going on. And so the ultimate goal is what we say is kind of strengthening community bonds. Judicial speech kind of may remind you of like the courtroom or law, and that's exactly correct. Basically, originally this kind of speech is about establishing facts. It's about establishing like what happened, for instance, in a trial. And so in the ancient context where this speech genre, came out of was literally that. But this maps onto our informative speaking. Anytime that our goal of the speech and thus the expectations in the audience are going to be that what the speaker is trying to establish is like a set of facts that you can then recount to them and you can account for something with those facts. Finally, deliberative is our stand-in for persuasive speech, essentially. It has to do with policy making often, both in the past and in the present. And it's about saying what should happen. It's about either trying to galvanize people to take some particular action or to at least in the future see something in a way that they didn't in the past. So deliberation comes out of the legislative context, actually, in ancient Greece. And this is, again, this kind of speech you still see today. In, like Congress, for instance, people are trying to persuade each other to support particular plans for what to do.